Hey everyone, welcome to the Lines Injury Podcast. I am your host for today, Nicole Russo, filling in once again for Steven Andress, and I am joined by Will Carroll at Injury Expert on Twitter. Will, it's good to be back with you again this week.
Definitely good, Well, I mean, it's good that you're here, but it's bad that we've got all these injuries to talk about. But hey, that's the NFL.
I was going to say, yeah, we had quite a big slate last time, and we have just about the same amount of topics to get into today. So without further ado, I'm going to intro us into our first one. So we're going to kick things off with Jonathan Taylor. Taylor's ankle flared up during the Colts' 17-16 loss against the Commanders last weekend in Week 8. He still finished the game with 16 rushes and 76 yards, but was not seen on practice Wednesday or Thursday this week. Right now, the Colts are 5.5-point underdogs to the New England Patriots. Will, is Taylor going to be hit with that question mark, that questionable tag for Sunday's game?
Yeah, I just talked to some people here in Indianapolis, and he is going to be a game time decision. They haven't seen the progress they expected to see. It had a little bit more swelling when he was doing the therapy on Monday and Tuesday. So this is something that could really affect him. And remember, they're down Nyheim Hines. They got Moss back in that trade, but he hasn't fully integrated into the offense yet, to be sure. And Taylor, obviously with the new quarterback, is the key to the offense. They've got to be able to run a little bit so they don't drop 8-9 people back. Taylor's going to have a tough time. He can be that north-south runner that we've seen in the past if he's 80%. But if he can't cut, he's not going to break long runs. He's not going to test that Patriots defense too much. The other thing that I think is key for Taylor is he's a very good blocker. He picks up blitzes, picks up stunts, and he's a big guy. They don't have somebody like that if he's not able to go. So he might just be out there in blocking situations if he's really limited. That would limit, obviously, the points he's going to get, the yardage he's going to get, but it could be a value. So even if he plays, he's problematic in that, they could have to put him in a role that isn't really productive.
So people should be checking their fantasy rosters this week ahead of this Colts matchup.
Yeah, fantasy rosters, any of the yardage props. I mean, we just don't know who Sam Ehlinger is at this stage.
No.
He's good. He's talented. I think it was the right decision to switch to him. But everything in the receiving yardage and Taylor's props, they're just too high for what we know.
Next up, we're going to take it to the Titans. Now, Ryan Tannehill missed the Titans' Week 8 game against the Texans due to an ankle injury. Rookie quarterback Malik Willis started instead. The Titans now face the Chiefs, and this week they are massive 12.5-point underdogs, and I think this one's actually going to swing a little bit more in the Chiefs' favor if Tannehill is totally ruled out. For now, it looks like he's practicing on a limited basis and playing through the pain, and he's commented on that pain. So give us a little bit more insight on this injury.
Yeah, this is a more severe ankle injury than we thought, and we didn't get a look at it last week because he got sick. It was non-COVID, I had flu-related symptoms, those kind of things. He just wasn't ready to play. So they put Malik Willis out there, and Willis looked not quite ready. They can hand the ball to Derrick Henry a lot, and that works against the Texans. But he just didn't show anything in the passing game. It's kind of the reverse with Taylor and the Colts. So I think we're going to get that again. I think it's going to be a heavy dose of Derrick Henry. If Tannehill can go, so much of his value is built up in the fact that he can extend a play. He can roll out of the pocket. He's not a running quarterback per se, but he's more mobile. If his ankle is problematic, that goes away, and then you have to start, kind of balancing it out. Mike Vrabel's going to have to look over at what he saw on film from Willis. He's going to look over to the medical staff and say, is he 70%? Is he 80%? What's that line where Tannehill is the best option? So this one, again, is going to go right up to game time. I do not like Tannehill this week. I think that line is right. I think it's going to be a blowout. I think they're going to have to over-rely on Derrick Henry. So I'm really kind of confused looking at the lines, I look at the number and I go, yeah, that looks about right. The props, some of the parlays, it's just kind of confusing because we don't know who the quarterback is. So I'm laying off those until we start to get that. But even at double-digit points, I still really like the Chiefs.
Yeah, I agree with you on this, like, Derrick Henry workhorse situation, right? I believe he's rushed for over 100 yards in the last 4 games. So I wasn't ready to, take to bet on the spread, but depending on what those Derrick Henry props are, I might take a look at that because, like you said, that especially if Malik Willis is back in, they're going to be relying on him pretty heavily for this game. All right, next up, we have got the Chargers, who might play this weekend without their top 2 receivers, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. The team will face the Falcons, and the injuries on offense are actually putting another player, Austin Eckler, in a pretty unique position to become potentially the first running back in the league to have at least 10 receptions in 3 consecutive games. Now, Allen is dealing with a hamstring injury that he has come out and said got worse during bye week training last week. And Mike Williams is also missing practice while continuing to rehab a high ankle sprain. Should we be looking at taking some Eckler props here with these injuries? Or, I mean, are the Chargers going to be without their top 2 receivers this weekend?
Well, now we get news that Austin Eckler is dealing with an abdominal strain. So until we get more news on that one, that one came out of nowhere, happened during practice. We don't know how serious it is at this stage. And as we record this, we just don't know. West Coast hasn't given a ton of information on that. So it's one of those situations where, yes, but everything you said is right. With Williams out, with Keenan Allen not able to get that burst, and talking to sources in LA, they're saying it's pretty much the same thing as last week. He's just not able to get off the line. If you look at the next gen stats, he was 2 steps slow and wasn't getting up to speed until he was 3 and 4 steps, which is showing he just doesn't have the burst nor the trust in that leg. With Williams, we can just wipe him out. That high ankle sprain is going to keep him out at least this week, probably more. We've seen more and more of these across the league. And I think people are starting to understand how long these can keep people out, especially for somebody like Williams, who's such a precise route runner. This is a tough one. If Eckler is down in any way, this is terrible for the Chargers. They've got some deep receivers that have looked pretty good, but they haven't been able to keep them healthy. And that's kind of been the story for the Chargers for the last couple of years.
I like your point, too, about I think the fans and other people around the league kind of being educated on how long these high ankle sprains can keep people out. I mean, when I was on here last with you, we were talking about Mac Jones, and people were, saying, oh, he was overreacting when some of the pictures came out when he was going into the locker room with, and people were surprised at how long he was out with that high ankle sprain. So yeah, it's a little bit different than, you think a sprain, you think 1 or 2 weeks, you rest it and they're back in the game, but we're seeing that that's not the case.
Yeah, exactly. These are a serious injury. They're something that can be a season-ending injury. We've got better treatment for them. I don't know why we're seeing more of them. It might just be better diagnostics, but we are seeing a significant uptick in them this year. It's been part of the discussion with turf. But again, Eckler is going to be great just because they don't really have anybody else. Certainly, if Allen goes, you want to stay away from him with that crazy hamstring. You can't rely on him being out there or leaving early like he did last time. The guy I do like is Joshua Palmer. He hasn't been able to stay healthy, as I said, but he's shown some bursts, and Justin Herbert has certainly been able to find him. So you have to go pretty deep in the props to find anything on Palmer. But if you're looking at Herbert and yardage, that's something you might look at because, even though he's, I think, the 3rd guy on their depth chart, he's been pretty good.
Next up, we've got another team that has been absolutely plagued with injuries this season and seasons past, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. Tight end Mark Andrews and their key running back did not practice Thursday before their Monday Night Football matchup against the New Orleans Saints. Now, Andrews is dealing with a shoulder and knee injury, and Edwards has a hamstring injury. Both players left last week's game early, but Coach Harbaugh came out and commented that he doesn't feel or neither injury is serious. The Ravens are 2.5-point favorites in this matchup. Do you think that both of these players take the field on Monday?
Yeah, I do. Andrews has played through pain before. The shoulder injury is something he's dealt with. The knee's new, but he's more of a physical presence. He's a crossing route kind of guy. He's a guy who finds ways to get open in the end zone just with his size and good eye, I guess. With Edwards, I'm a little more worried about this minor hamstring just because he's just coming back from ACL reconstruction, and second, that running back situation in Baltimore has been chaotic all year. Dobbins is out. He's out for another couple weeks. They've got Kenyon Drake. They've got Justice Hill. Even if he's playing, he doesn't necessarily go right back to the starter. It could come down to roll. It could come down to how the game goes. Lamar Jackson steals touchdowns in the red zone. They've lost Rashad Bateman for the season, so at least they've got some understanding that Devin Duvernay is their guy. Andrews is still going to see the targets, but he could have one of those days like 8 catches and 20 yards and a touchdown, which is great for fantasy. It's pretty bad for football. Certainly bad for props unless you find one of those target props. So it's one of those weird things where it's really bad for the Ravens. It's really uncertain for those of us that are trying to put bets down or understand where this is going to go. But at least Harbaugh seemed to have a handle on it.
Definitely. And next, we're going to take it to my hometown team, not the personal team that I root for, but my hometown team, the Las Vegas Raiders, were blown out last weekend, 24-0 against the New Orleans Saints. And the status of their star tight end, Darren Waller, still remains one of their biggest question marks. Waller injured his hamstring in week 5 and has not played since. He was limited in practice last week, but eventually ruled out against the Saints. Do you think he finally suits up this weekend?
Yeah, I think he does. And gosh, do they need him? That it looked really bad. It's going to come down to game time. This is another one of those real game time decisions. They'll probably list him as questionable when that comes out. But again, this is a big physical guy. He's not a speed guy. He's not a route running kind of guy. If he can get out there, if he can do the kind of things that he does, I know that sounds a little basic, but all he has to do is get out there and be big. He doesn't have to be fast. He doesn't have to really stress that hamstring too much. He's not a guy who does a lot of deep routes. He does a lot of long catches because he'll break tackles. He'll just shuck somebody off. But you're going to see 5-yard outs and things like that. Short things. Waller's so good at those little curls to get to the first down line. So I think we'll see a lot of those. So it might be more volume from Derek Carr than it is distance for Darren Waller.
And the Raiders definitely would love to have him back. And this next one is pretty sad news for the Saints. Their star wide receiver, Michael Thomas, was put on the injured reserve and will undergo surgery on his foot. He did dislocate his second toe, and treatment up to this point has been ineffective. Originally, they were hoping 3 to 4 weeks rest would do the trick, but it is not so. Is this the last that we're going to see of Michael Thomas this season, knowing he has to have surgery?
Yeah, and I think it might be the last we see of him, which is sad.
Wow.
It took him so long to come back from that ankle. He's had foot injuries. He's had contralateral injuries on the other side from where his problems were, which usually indicate a gait problem. They've got problems with that turf. The league has problems with turf, but that turf specifically. What he did dislocating that toe is he tore the plantar plate, which is the little tendinous thing underneath. They're going to have to put that back together. There's just not a lot of these. You don't see them. And for a speed guy, for a physical receiver like Michael Thomas, he was one of those combination guys that we saw coming in at the end of the 2000s. That he's not just big, he's not just fast, he's both. That's why he was so good. You couldn't match somebody up with him. You would either have to have a bigger guy that was slow or a faster guy that was small. And Thomas, he was amazing. But physical things just wear you down. And this kind of injury on top of the kind of injuries, plus the time he's lost, I just don't see a lot of guys coming back from this. I'm sure he'll get chances if he wants to. Somebody will take a shot on a bonus-laden contract, probably the Saints, since they know him so well. But this year, he's done, and it's just sad to see somebody that good be torn down by injuries. He was on track for a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, definitely not the news anybody wanted to hear this week. To finish things off, we're going to be taking a look at the Falcons. Their running back, Cordarrelle Patterson, did return to the practice field Wednesday after missing 4 games with a knee injury. He commented that he is about 90% back to his full speed, but is that enough for the Falcons to activate him for their upcoming game against the Chargers? The Falcons are currently 3-point home dogs.
Yeah, I was talking to people in Atlanta today, and they haven't made a final decision on whether he's going to play, whether he's going to be activated to the roster. They'd have to make some other moves, but it's really, really close. So I do think they're going to do that. Atlanta's been a confusing team. They're obviously a transitional team this year. So it's a situation where he has shown he is the best back for that situation. You know, he's such an unusual player coming into the league as a big wide receiver, and now he's one of those kind of hybrid running back wide receivers. You certainly don't think of him like Christian McCaffrey. He's more of the Deebo Samuel type, but even bigger than that. So does he need to have the lateral moves? No, he just runs over people mostly. He put out a video a couple weeks ago, and you see a lot of people with knee injuries do this, where they're showing him sprinting. The first one I remember was Todd Gurley, just a couple weeks after his ACL surgery. He was on a treadmill just flying, going 11, 12 miles an hour. You crank that thing up. That's not what the problem is. The problem is not running straight forward. The problem is being able to stop. So they never show you that. The problem is cutting. So show me that. So when you see one of these videos, it's sort of a trick. It looked good. Thank you. Good job, Cordarrelle. But that's not what we need to see. We haven't seen it. Again, I think he's going to be good. I don't think he's going to be great. That's a mess of an offense. This is one of those weeks I would lay off pretty much everybody over there. Again, with a mobile quarterback like Mariota, he might end up taking those touchdowns, which is where he has so much value.
Will, as always, thanks for letting me fill in and have this chat with you today. Steven will be back next week. And if you guys are betting on any of these games, good luck with your bets this weekend. We will see you next time.